in Action, which is a 3-day workshop series looking at the current status and implementation of the Connecting Europe Facility CEF eArchiving building block. My name is Tom Phillis, and I'm sort of the MC for today's session, so I'm just going to be introducing the various components of the agenda. But you'll hopefully not be hearing too much from me, as we have our experts and our speakers here with us. So I'll do just some very, very quick housekeeping. First of all, I would just like to note that the CEF digital platform is currently down. We don't know why it's down, but we are experiencing some downtime, so we apologize for that. Hopefully the site will be up again soon. For the very short term, I posted a very quick agenda for today in the chat, just to help sort of steer us a bit through. I would ask if everyone can just please mute themselves. I can hear a little bit of distortion on the line, so please check that you are muted, and our moderator, Pavel, will be going through muting people as needed. As you will see, there is a chat function in WebEx, so we have specific Q&A sessions foreseen throughout the day, so we can take questions there for individual speakers and also more general speakers. And if you have, if you have any major questions as we're going through, if something you really don't understand, or if you're having some technical problems, then you can use the chat function to get the attention of the organizing team, and we'll address that question. For videos, we ask that if you're a participant, you turn off your video, and this is just to ensure that we keep the bandwidth. Speakers are, of course, invited to do so, they don't have to. So voila, I think that covers our housekeeping. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to our first speaker, who is Rehena Schwininger-Ladek, who is the head of unit for the European Commission unit for interactive technologies and digital for culture and education. Rehena, please.
Thank you, Thomas. So good morning to everyone from snowy Luxembourg. It's beautifully white here, but no sunshine yet. So it's my pleasure to open the first eArchiving workshop for 2021. We're still in January, so I think I can still convey to you all my best wishes for this new year, which no doubt will be better for all of us. So, as Thomas said, my name is Rehena Schwininger-Ladek, and I'm the head of the unit in charge of interactive technologies, digital for culture and education at the European Commission, at the DG, responsible for communications network, content and technology. My unit is in charge of the eArchiving building block, but is also responsible for the policy support to the digital transformation of the cultural heritage sector and to educational systems. And my unit is also responsible for the wider uptake of XR technologies such as augmented reality and virtual reality in industrial and societal domains. As we are all witnessing it every day, and even more acutely during this lockdown and work from home period, we live in a world that is increasingly digital or that is digitally powered. Data is a core component of this digital dimension. It is an essential resource for our businesses, for our industries, as we see more and more, but also for public administrations, for public services, and also for societal areas like for health. We're speaking a lot about the modernization of health or smart mobility. And this also applies to a number of domains like, for instance, cultural heritage that we will speak later in the week. In the State of the Union speech a few months ago, in September 2020, President von der Leyen, she mentioned the digital decade. She spoke about the need for a real data economy that would be a powerful engine for innovation and jobs. And in the last days of 2020, my Directorate General presented a number of important legislation to support this digital decade. And these legislations, I'll just mention them because we don't have time, nor is it the purpose to go deep into it. The first one was the Data Governance Act. Then we had the Digital Services Act and the Digital Market Act. So really three important pieces of legislation. Specifically, the Data Governance Act aims to foster the availability of data for use by increasing trust in data intermediaries and by strengthening data sharing mechanisms across the EU. because the amount of data that we see generated by public bodies and businesses and citizens is just exponentially growing. We expect it's going to be multiplied by 5 within the next 5 years. So these new rules in the Data Governance Act will allow data to be harnessed and to pave the way for sectoral European data spaces that can then benefit companies, businesses, but also society and citizens. And of course, when we speak about data, interoperability, access, reuse, preservation, migration, and trust are paramount components. The Data Governance Act mentions the contribution of the building blocks developed under the Connecting Europe Facility program by the Commission to implement this data governance framework, which will allow to foster the wider use and reuse of data. So building blocks are one of the most mature set of actions that we have been developing over this past 7 years to facilitate cross-border interaction between public administrations, businesses, and citizens by deploying digital service infrastructure and broadband networks. And eArchiving is one of these 10 building blocks. It was launched 2 years ago in December 2018 to facilitate the preservation, the migration, the reuse, and trust of data, of your data. So the objective of eArchiving is to help public entities, administrations to address the challenges of short, medium, and long-term data management and reuse. National archives have been forerunners in adopting eArchiving. Our objective is that there is a wider adoption of the eArch specification across a broad range of sectors and countries. And it is important in this respect to have an exchange of experience, best practice, and knowledge to ensure that we have effective new user communities. And these workshops, they play an important part in raising awareness about the need to adopt digital preservation tools and the merit of eArchiving services. So this is a very quick and broad way of introduction to the 3 workshops that will be held over this week. As most of us are working from home and spending our days in front of our screens, we thought that it would be more practical to organize short sessions every other day so that you can just easily listen in. So we're launching today, which is going to be focused on data producers. The second workshop will be held on Wednesday for archives and preservation aspects. And the third workshop will be on Friday for solution providers. So the agenda is on the chat because the website has a short downtime time, and it's going to be up very soon. So for each workshop, we will have a combination of presentations, interviews, use cases, and panel discussions to allow you to get practical knowledge of how eArchiving can help you to tackle the issues of long-term access and access to information. We have speakers from different sectors, background, will be contributing to the discussion. So I would like to thank them warmly for their participation. And I would also like to thank the organizers from the Commission, from the Stakeholder Management Office, and from the eArchiving Consortium. And with this, I will leave you because I think I have exceeded the 5 minutes I was given. So back to you, Thomas, and I wish you all a wonderful week ahead. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rahana, for that. Indeed, we're going to move straight on to our next session. So we'll have speakers from the Commission and from the eArch Consortium. So Fulgencio, I believe the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Rejana. So my name is Fulgencio San Martin. I'm a policy officer here at the Commission, and I'm co-business owner with my colleague Adelina Dino of the eArchiving building block. Next slide, please. So why do we even preserve? We preserve because we want to avoid losing memory and repeating errors. This is the first known written reference to the need of preservation, and it was written by Plato 24 centuries ago. I would like to thank for the reference and for the Timaeus text and its translation, because I don't speak yet any Greek, to Marinos Ioannidis, He is the chair of UNESCO in Cyprus and also the representative at Europeana. You will meet him on Wednesday on the table on cultural heritage. I would like to also let you know that all the pictures used in this presentation are taken from Europeana, and I invite you to do the same. Next slide, please. So this composed picture is also from Europeana. And the question is, what do we preserve? What we should preserve? I must tell you that there are many examples that preserving everything is really not an option. It's usually not an option. Preserving everything also it's impossible. So, for example, in the 70s, the humankind, we wanted to know and to communicate with people with other life out there. So the NASA had an idea to launch two spaceships, with some of the best humankind could offer. So they did a choice because they couldn't put all the music, all the spoken languages, all what we do. So they did some choices. So some music, some sounds, and also some spoken languages. Actually, greetings in just 2 or 3 words in 55 languages. The thing is, the important part of that is not what they put, probably, but what they didn't put. So which languages were not in the Voyagers? Which music was not there? Which pictures were not there? As far as we know, that is the farthest repository and information packages that we ever created. The farthest, they are farther than the cloud, for example. And by the way, it still works. As far as we know, there is a small nuclear power plant in them. The news, the information that they are carrying is coming back in about a day, actually a light day. And this demonstrates that we always preserve for the future, not for the past. So when you hear the word archive, you must think that we are preserving and we are thinking on the reuse in the future. Next slide, please. This is another example that if we don't preserve, the memory is lost, and we might need to repeat even our research, our scientific research, which is so common nowadays due to the vaccine and to the coronavirus. We know how important that is. Well, maybe some of the research that was done already in the 90s or even before, but the data is lost because we didn't preserve it. So it's always a difficult line, what we should preserve and what we should not. And that is usually the prerogative, the work of the archivist. Next slide, please. So Rehana talked a moment ago about the digital decade as announced by the Miss Ursula von der Leyen in the State of the Union. And one of the things that von der Leyen said was that 80% of the preserved data in the cloud is never used. So we should be very, very clever about what we preserve. Next slide, please. I will talk later about the building blocks. So this is about how we preserve. So I will pass to the next slide, please. Okay, just a second. So how can the Commission help? Can you go to the previous slide, please? Sorry, the order of the slides is not what I expected. So how do we preserve? Let's have a look at the foundations. So some years ago, all the member states at the Commission, at the Union, at the European Union, signed this Tallinn Declaration. It was for public administrations, but you will see that these principles are applicable to everyone and to every business and to the whole single digital market, because we thought that it was good to lead by example by the public administration, but it can be applied to every business. So we thought that the best way to build the better digital public services was to be based in the foundations of these 7 principles. Now, the building blocks were created based on them, and they all are based in this. eArchiving is mainly based on 3, 4, 5, so on trustworthiness, certainly on the openness and transparency, but also mainly in the interoperability by default. But all the principles are applicable. Next slide, please. So the Commission wanted to help public and private entities build digital services. So at the Commission, we started with these standards, and the standards will be, upon standards, we will be building the basic components. And we call these basic components just the building blocks.
The one I sent with the red border and blue border.
Next slide, please. Okay, so the policy of eArchiving is based on these simple foundations: preservation. How will we be able to reduce the data in years to come? Because that is the main purpose of preserving the data, that we will be able to reduce it in years to come in the future. So at least as archivists, we don't have a crystal ball. We cannot foresee the future in 10 years. The only thing that we know is that in 15 years, in 20 years, probably the cloud will be overcome. We will not use any of the formats we are using now and that we are archiving now. So the archivists always think on how to preserve the data so it can be reused in the future. And the only way of doing that is to rely in international standards, in the best tools that we have, in transparency, in trustworthiness, in interoperability. You put the data in a silo and it will stay there. It will be a black box. But probably in 15 years, we don't know what formats will be used, but we know that probably that data will not be reusable. And that is what archivists want to avoid and work to avoid. One of the tools that we are using now is, as Rehana also mentioned, the Data Governance Act. And also one of the policies of eArchiving that we are using is the reach wider. If we reach to other levels of public administrations, to solution providers, to small and medium enterprises, and to even other domains, you will see that on Wednesday with the cultural heritage and other domains, we will be able to reach that. So we created this call mentioned in the slide. The evaluation is ongoing, so we cannot talk much about it. But what we can announce here today, this is news and this is very interesting, especially for solution providers, cloud software providers, etc. On Thursday, we will have a separate session for them on Thursday. What we are announcing today, and this is news, we will create an eArchiving building block conformant website and stamp. So if you have an archive, you have a product, you have your archive is conformant with eArchiving, let us know, because we will be happy to add it to the website that we will create. And you will be able to say that your product, your archive, your digital archive or repository is conformant with eArchiving. Thank you, and over to our next one. Next slide.
Sorry, can I just dive in? Can everyone please make sure they are muted, because I can hear some people talking across Fulgencio.
No.
I can't see who's speaking, but please, can you please make yourself muted so we can hear the speakers? Thank you very much, Fulgencio.
My pleasure. Over to Anders Bo.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Anders Bo Nielsen. I'm from the Norwegian Health Archives, and these are the speakers for this part of the eArchiving in Action workshop, the eArchiving introduction. We have Clara Castillo from Spain, Diogo Prensa from the University of Lisbon, Fulgencio San Martin, you just heard, from ECTG Connect, Istvan Afoldi from Polyphon Hungary, Jamie Kaminski from Highbury Research Development from Ireland, Janet Anderson from the DNA Coordination Team, and Karen Brandenberg from Sydakivera, Sweden, and finally, but not least, Kuda from the Digital Archives of Estonia. And next slide, please, for the agenda. For the next hour, you will hear about the challenges of digital preservation and how they're met by the eArchiving building block. First, you will get a very brief introduction to the eArchtree consortium, followed by a long introduction to the eArchiving services, and finally, a case study from the Italian Central Archives. Now, let's have a look at the next slide and the eArchtree consortium. Who are we? Well, the eArchtree consortium consists of archival institutions such as the National Archives of Finland, research institutions such as the Austrian Institute of Technology, and solution providers such as Keep Solutions. Having a look at the next slide, we will present our role in the eArchiving building block. The role of the eArchtree consortium, out on the right part, is to be the service provider. In other words, we are providing coordination, specifications, sample software, training, and outreach, activities of which you will hear much more. We will now continue with Janet Anderson from the coordination team interviewing Carlotta Costello about the issues of digital archiving in Spain in particular and in Europe in general. Over to you, Janet.
Depends on site survey and what the preferences for the royal guards are.
Please mute all your microphones, except for Janet and Carlota.
Apparently her unmute button has disappeared.
Okay, shall we?
I've got it, Tom. I've got it.
Voilà, Janet, well done.
Sorry about that. Hello, I'm Janet Anderson, and I'm going to be interviewing Carlotta Costello from Spain.
Good morning, Janet.
Morning, Carlotta. Okay, so digital archiving, we've just heard from Fulgencio, is a huge challenge, and it's a Europe-wide challenge. So, Carlotta, what do you think are the issues, both in Spain in particular and in Europe more generally?
I think that the big issue is, what do we mean by digital archiving? That is, for me, is not really clear, because I think a lot of people think that it's only keep files in a folder of the file system of your computer. And it's very difficult to understand the boundaries, for example, with record management and what is the position of a digital archive. I think that is a big question, that is, do we need specific information systems for digital archiving? If affirmative, that probably is affirmative, this is the answer of this question, then we have a second one, that is, what is the core business of this dedicated information system? If I see from the perspective of the OIS model and consequently eArchiving, the building block eArchiving, because it's based in this model, the core is digital preservation. And that is the thing that for example, I see that in Spain is two different approaches to this. Because one is building dedicated archival information systems, but the emphasis is in archive management more than in digital preservation. The other possible approach is to build record management system solutions and to make them like archives, at least in the part of archival management. So for me, the conclusion is before use or reuse eArchiving building block, we have to have very clear the approach of digital preservation, and we have to decide what approach we want to implement. In some places, like in my country, in Spain, could be a little difficult because a slightly different interpretation on what is a digital archive is in the legislation. We have a legislation that establishes a mandatory electronic archive for the public sector, but the developments done under this mandatory statement have a weak component on digital long preservation. So it is more understood to transfer the electronic the place to transfer the electronic case files and records when it's closed, but not a complete digital archiving solution. So in my view, despite we like it or not, part of the challenge is we are very influenced by the paper mindset. Even included in the current legislation is normal, and we try to reproduce the physical world when we make the transition, and logically, digital preservation needs are not included, but because digital preservation needs are completely different than analog, the preservation needs.
Thank you, Carlos. That's really interesting. So in your opinion, how important are standard systems for Spain and other countries in Europe in order to be able to compete in the digital single market, which Fulgencio will be telling us about in a moment?
Okay, I think it's the most important thing. I think we don't have standards. We can not compete, not cooperate, not interoperate. So it's impossible to do that without standards. I think that always, at least in my country, is a big trend to follow in the European Union's leads in always looking to see what is the European Union doing with some sectors and following the direction. And so should be the same for eArchiving. The European Union with the building block, the eArchiving building block, provides an example to follow. But it's not mandatory, but you have to, or you use the building block because it's a very good recommendation. And why is a very good recommendation? Because it's done with the participation of people of different contexts, countries, and sensibilities. We reach a consensus on a common framework of understanding, and that is the strength of the building block.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Carlota. And over to Fulgencio to talk about the digital single market and the 10 building blocks.
Well, we already talk about the digital single market, why it is important. In this case, it is not only for digital preservation, but also for online payments. That is, it is good that we could buy things and buy services, particularly culture services during the confinements last year and even now. We could do online banking, we could do online taxes, business across borders. Some countries do not that much, but for example, Luxembourg depends heavily on this digital single market because of the neighboring countries. But not only for online payment, but also I can tell you my own experience with, for example, studying abroad. I did a master some years ago in Lund University in Sweden, and I must tell you that I worked on that master during 4 years, living in 3 different countries, None of them was Spain, where I come from, and I can tell you, I studied in Lund, Sweden, and I've never been in Sweden, sadly, because I wanted to. I wanted to defend my final master work in Sweden and know my teachers and so on, my professors, but I couldn't do it because there were some problems at the last minute, some holidays, and I couldn't do it. But that is one good thing about the digital single market. You can study abroad, just online and across borders. Next slide, please. So these are the building blocks. I will not explain them in detail. You can go to the website and check them. By the way, the website is back online. Sorry for the problems, but I can imagine a data service of some kind. For example, the broker service, the big data, or the blockchain, which is created with an EID, with an identity, which is also one of the objectives mentioned in the digital decade by Ms. von der Leyen, the president of the Commission. That service could be also e-translated, signed with e-signature, e-invoiced, e-delivered, and e-archived for future reuse. It could be a wonderful example. The good thing is you don't have to use them all. You can use the ones that you need them, and they are for free. Well, most of them are for free. Some of them require some work or some service, and then you would pay only small fees for. Just look at the websites, because each building block is different, but they all can be combined. That's it. Over to Carlota, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Fulgencio. So in the building block eArchiving, we have identified 3 types of stakeholders. That is, it is why we have 3 different workshops in this day, one for the data producers, another one for archives, another one for solution providers. But there are common important points for the 3 types of stakeholder, and what does it mean for them, the eArchiving building block. The eArchiving building block means awareness about the importance of digital archiving and digital preservation issues, sustainability, because digital preservation is a big issue, so any kind of standardization of good practices support the aim to be sustainable a long time. And the third one is collaboration, being part of a broad community of people, groups, and organizations sharing a common understanding and practices. So next slide, please. But for each specific type of stakeholder, they have their own needs, and eArchiving provides an approach for them. So for the 3 following slides, we have on the left examples of the identify specific needs, and in the right, the eArchiving approach to fulfill these needs. For the data producers, we identify that you can be in one of these cases. You have a valuable digital information to be kept over time. You can have this information is located in information systems close to be decommissioned. Your information management strategy fails when you try to access digital information in all systems. So the approach of eArchiving for this is packaging your information in a way that could be understood over time independently from the technology. And the other one is eArchiving the package in a repository or archive for managing them over the time. You can build your own repository, or you can select an external one. That is for the data producers. Next slide, please. For the archives, you can receive digital information and don't know how to manage it. The producers then transfer information, need to transfer you digital information and don't know how to do. They know perfectly how to do with paper, but not in digital information. Another case is you are digitizing your holdings and don't know how to manage master copies, or your own a digital repository, but are not sure about its usability over time. So the eArchiving approach is building or improving your repository using a standardized way to ingest, archive, and disseminate information through the information packages. Don't reinvent the wheel. That is the idea. We can use the same. all over the places. The second one is participating in a network to share your needs and experience with other archives for finding solutions. It's easier to find a solution altogether than just on your own. And the third one is transfer or sharing easily your information package with other archives when it's needed. From time to time, we have needs to interchange information packages with another archives, and through the building block, it could be a very good way. Next slide, please. And for the solution providers, probably you could be in one of these cases, your digital archiving solution clients and are asking for customization at any time, and that is not very good for you. Or your solution for managing information lacks the component of digital preservation over time. They are good in another functionalities, but not in this one. Or you have a product related to digital archiving that needs to be positioned in the market. So what is the eArchiving approach for you? You can incorporate in or adapting standardized information packages to your solution. You can reuse components of software or develop your own validator but use the validating tools for your solution, as Fulgencio has already told, and being an eArchiving conformant solution. And you can market your products with data producers and archive in a common understanding of the issue. So I am finalizing this. I am going to return the floor to Janet.
Canvas, and we're going to look today at several things. We're going to look at specifications, we're going to look at software and compliance testing and validation, training and reference architecture. And so over to Diogo now to look in detail at our service offerings.
Good morning. So this next section will focus on our services that the eArchiving building block provides. So we'll focus on first on user engagement and outreach, then we'll go to specification, maintenance and development, then for sample software, technical support and testing services, and finally for our training services. So as you can see, we have an all-encompassing service offering. So next slide. So where can you find our services? So by accessing the eArchiving website, right at the top, you have a link for services. And then when you open that link, you can see at the left panel, all the collection of our services, where you can find detailed descriptions of each services and more information. So next slide. So first, we're going to talk about user engagement and outreach. So this is an activity that focuses on engaging with new organizations, with new stakeholders, with new business areas, and we try to leverage the use of eArchiving in those sectors, and also engage with them to realize what is the purpose of archiving and digital preservation and long-term accessibility. So next section, the next slide, please. So how can you start onboarding? So you can do it through our service desk. So in our eArchiving website, to the services section that I just detailed, that I just talked about, we have a link to the service desk. When you have a system that is just like a service desk system that where you can pose your questions, where that Cooler is going to talk about later, and also you have an email address where you can email us for the service desk. You also can email any of the consortium members of ER3. You can also contact the DLM Forum Secretariat, and we can also email to the service desk. We also have our social media, so have LinkedIn and Twitter accounts. You can use the hashtag eArchiving to engage with us. And we also have events such as this one, Other the events that that revolve around the LM forum, like webinars, our training events, and also other external events where we participate. So next slide, please. So Carlota, back to you.
Thank you, Diogo. In this slide, we present a typical and complete process of onboarding in the use of eArchiving building block. It is suitable for the three types of stakeholders: the data producers, the archives, and the solution providers. But it starts with the assumption that you face the issue of digital archiving for the first time, which could not be your case. So you can start the onboarding process in any of the steps and not in the first one. But in any case, it'd be interesting to see the whole process. In blue is the part of prospecting, analysis requirements. And in green, there are when you are in the phase of setup, select, design, deploy, integrate, and operate. And we can expect your feedback in any of these, and we can provide some help in any of these. And finally, in this kind of yellow, we have the phase of improvement, where we have the assess the current state of the archiving implementation using a maturity assessment tool, and improve based on the assessment results, improve the stakeholder organization, eArchiving maturity. So if you need any additional details, you can go through this link, and we can provide some help in any of the steps you are in the using of eArchiving building blocks. So this is this help is provided by the eArchives consortium in a limited resources scenario, but we can help, and we are very happy to do it. But it's not about we are doing the work. You have to do the work, but we can help you in any of these steps. If you decide you don't need our support for this process, what is perfectly possible, as any results and components of eArchiving building block are public available, we are willing to receive your feedback using to improve and increase eArchiving common knowledge. So now I am going to pass the floor to Isvan for the reference architecture model.
Thank you, Carlota. I'd like to summarize how the eArchiving reference architecture supports onboarding. The reference architecture is a new initiative. It supports institutions by mapping the crucial strategy and business components of digital preservation. The components are connected to eArchiving specifications and sample software in order to help eArchiving implementers decide which components are most reasonable to be used for the specific business context. Next, please. According to the Archimate specification, the reference architecture follows a multi-layer structure and provides a set of diagrams. The layers basically correspond to general questions. The strategy layer elements answer the what you need question, defining the value stream and required capabilities. The business layer elements the what you do question, defining business services, functions, and processes. And the application layer answers the how question. This is where the eArchiving specifications and tools can be best linked. Next, please. The motivation aspect part of the model presents the motivations or reasons that guide the design of the eArchiving reference architecture. It aims to answer the questions of why do I need eArchiving and what are the benefits of implementing eArchiving, by defining principles as well as drivers and goals for each stakeholder. Next slide, please. The reference architecture follows the line we have started with the eArch general model, providing a structured framework where all eArchiving processes, specifications, concepts, tools are mapped with the goals and drivers of each eArchiving stakeholder. So, what are the benefits of using the eArchiving reference architecture? For data producers, a better understanding of the concepts and approaches of long-term preservation and accessibility, better communication with archives, better understanding of the impact of digital archiving legislations. For archives, easier, more effective and economical solutions, interoperability between organizations and systems, and better communication with producers and regulatory agencies. Finally, for solution providers, cheaper implementation and maintenance, better mapping product scope to archival solutions, last but not least, pan-European market potential. And back to Diogo.
So our plans are to engage with more new domains that are not socially the customs or associated with the digital archiving or long-term accessibility. Although our core domains will remain what we call the archives, the government agencies, the government and the businesses, we are also trying to go for new domains, and we are having a success in that front. So we have been piloting the archiving solutions on information systems at the EC Directorate for Taxation and Customs. We are scoping possible actions with eHealth, and we also are engaging with the research data community through the Research Data Alliance and the European Open Science Cloud. So, and back to you, Karen.
Well, I would say not back to me since it's the first time I'm talking, but welcome everybody. I'm Karin Bredenberg, and as you've heard, I'm working with the specification. So if we take the next slide. So we already know we have a lot of different things. You have heard it from both Fulgencio and Carlotta. We have a mess on our left side. We want to transfer this, so we put it into the magic machine in the middle, and out we get two nice things. A nice package in the form of a CSIP, and in that we have the SITs. So if we go to the next slide. The core of what we are doing with the specification is actually to try to structure these boxes. So a specification has a number of documents, and you will become familiar with them if you aren't already. You have the specification. In the specification, we give the requirements on the structuring of the data using already existing standards. We don't invent anything new. The requirements are corresponding to an XML schema. You heard that Fulgencio said we should have a stamp. This stamp shows that you are conformant, you can validate, and we need to have the XML schema to be able to validate the data. XML schema in itself has some limitations. So to express all the requirements, we are also using the pink little bunny named Schematron. For making it easier for you to understand, we also supply examples and a guideline. And the guideline can be for more than one specification. Next slide, please. This is a cramped slide, I know that. The specifications are available for free in GitHub and on the DILSIS board's website. We also put everything, as Carlotta said, you are welcome to give feedback. We put every specification that we create on review, open review for everybody to give their comments and suggestions. On the top of this image, you see the information packages. So we have one special one being for all the packages, everything that's common for a package. The box we want to fill with something. The long bars are the different things we currently are putting in the package. It's archival information, preservation metadata, You heard Diogo saying eHealth. We can put eHealth in the same box. Geodata, relational databases. That's when you don't really, the databases are a huge thing and have been for a long time. You need to be able to transfer that information. The same with the records management information. And I'm just encouraging you all to look into the specification, read, ask questions, and participate. For making these things work, I'm going to hand over to Kuldar, who are working with the softwares.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Kuldar from the National Archives of Estonia, when I'm not working with European interoperability. And with eArchiving, within the eArchiving building block, I'm responsible, as you can read here, for sample software technical support and testing services. Next slide, please. Thank you. And effectively, the questions or the user needs, which I'm trying to answer with my team, is what you can see here on this slide. So it's either if you have read the eArchiving specifications and the eArchiving strategy, and you would like to have a eArchiving compliant digital archive, then how can you actually get the software for it? How can you implement it? When you are, for example, a software or service provider and you want to desperately want to offer EARC compliant services, but your software isn't yet compliant with the EARC specifications that Karin talked about, or when simply you do not fully understand the textual documents and you want to be sure what the specifications are about. And all of these questions effectively within the eArchiving building block, we want to solve with the help with software. Next slide. And how we call it is basically sample software or sample software portfolio. I've been trying to gather into the eArchiving building block a set of open source solutions, which actually solve these same three main needs, which I highlighted on the last slide. So we have a few examples of open source software to really provide a full archival solution, a digital archive platform. We're not saying that we promote one or the other, but basically we are providing sample ideas on what is available, how can we implement things. We are providing open source software libraries for software developers. So if you want to have if you want to implement eArch information package creation, then we have software libraries in Java and Python, which you can simply plug into your system. You don't need to develop the same thing over and over again. And the third aspect, as said, we want to also demonstrate how the information packages and the specifications behave in the wild in a real archival scenario. So we have a few demonstration environments which you can just either download or use online and see how the specifications work. Next slide. The most important and specific component within the sample software portfolio is eArch validation. So we do understand that in the end of the day, for interoperability, it's good if everybody claims to support one or the other standard, but you also want to have some insurance. And that's in the end of the day called validation, certification, and in eArch, one of our aims over the past year has also been to develop an eArch information package validator. So a piece of software, again, available in Java and Python, which takes an eArch information package, an information package which claims to be conformant with eArch specifications, and really runs a number of tests to understand whether the statement is correct or not. There will be a lot of talk about this validator over the next few days as well. So Carl Wilson from OPF is going to give some demos and talk more about it. Anyway, just mentioning here that there is a download available from GitHub, so visit our GitHub site, but there is also a web demonstrator. So when you just want to upload a individual information package and run through the validator, that's your possibility as well. And the third option is on the next slide. So this validator, we tend to also use to set up a conformance testing service. So a first instance of this is already running. officially on the eArchiving under the European Commission domain. And what it will develop into is a conformance compliance testing solution, where the eArchiving building block really looks and goes through different pieces of software which claim to be eArchiving compliant and provides a quality stamp. But again, about this conformance testing solution, we will talk a lot more over the next few days. Next slide. And what was also mentioned before, that if you get any questions in regard to the software, if you get any questions in regard to the onboarding service or the specifications, if you can't find the documentation to answer your questions, then we always encourage you to get into direct contact with us. So, for example, when you visit the eArchiving website, which, as I've heard, is back online, then there is not only one, but even multiple possibilities to on the site to get to the right place, to get to the service desk. So, for example, you contact us and support here. Next slide. And until now, the European Commission demands you to log in, to register on the service desk. But once you do that, then you get convenient possibility to provide different questions on, let's say, in regard to starting to use eArchiving. If you have any general questions, technical questions to the specifications of software, we've got you covered. So really saying here that please contact us, please ask your questions, and please consider eArchiving, and we are always there to help you. Thank you, and over to Jamie on more help from eArchiving.
Thank you, Kuldar. One of the services that the building block offers is training, which is run by the eArch Consortium. But before we start looking at what training we provide, I think I'll say a few words about our ethos. Next slide. Now, I begin every presentation with this statement. Our training is based on actual user requirements. And this underpins everything we do. We pride ourselves on listening to the community, and we do that in a number of different ways. Where possible, we talk to people at events and meetings, but obviously they are in somewhat short supply at the moment. But we also deploy questionnaires, some general, some sector specific. Next slide, please. Our most famous is our 2-yearly user needs survey, which we deployed in 2018 and 2020. So this 2-yearly approach is really quite useful because we can compare responses between years and begin to see trends. Next slide, please. So, for example, we can see here that there's a significant change in the perceived value of online instructor-led training between 2018 and 2020. If you click twice, please. Basically, we see an increase of 21 percentage points in the last 2 years. We've simply interpreted this as being a function of the increased awareness and use of online video conferencing technology caused by all the lockdowns. But this will obviously guide how we approach training in the future. Next slide, please. So, generally speaking, we're seeing a lot of consistency though between our results in 2018 and 2020, which is, it suggests that what we're seeing is actual trends rather than just anomalies. So this is really positive. Slide. So what services do we provide? Well, you probably gathered we had planned on a program of face-to-face training, some of which would have run alongside industry events and conferences. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, this has not been possible. So our principal window into the world at the moment is the eArchiving webinar series. Next slide.
Sorry, Jamie, could you speak up just a little bit louder? Some people are struggling to hear you.
Of course, of course. Does this
wonderful,
help?
thank you. So, yeah, that's much better, thanks.
Right. So here you can see the a screenshot of the webinar website. Next slide, please. The format is fairly consistent. So we run our webinars on the second and last Thursdays of the month, starting at 10 a.m. set. And they tend to last for about an hour to an hour and a half, including questions. And the great thing is they're entirely free. You can see the 2020 timetable here. So you can see we've done sessions already on the common specification for information packages that Karen has just spoken about. We've done sessions on the eSSArch, which is an end-to-end system, geospatial data, service process, RODA, another end-to-end system, the Database Preservation Toolkit, and finally, validation and conformance. But we're just getting started. Next slide, please. So here's a brief overview of our 2021 season. So our first webinar will be on Thursday, the 25th of February, and we'll be looking at the eArch web user interface, which will be led by Sven Schlab from the Austrian Institute of Technology, AIT. And that'll be followed by a session on our new eHealth content information type specification. And that'll be by Stephen McKay of Pickle. And that's, as Diogo mentioned, one of our new domains. We'll also be doing sessions on validation and performance, geospatial data, CSIP, the eArch reference architecture, the practical applications of digital archiving, and a lot more. So there's a lot more to look forward to in the coming months. Next slide, please. Now, don't worry if you can't attend the live webinars. The webinars are recorded and made available on the eArchiving webinar page, which you can see here. On this page, you have access to the PDF and the slide deck and a recording of the webinar itself. And if you look in the far right-hand column, you can see a link to the answers to questions asked during the webinar. So this is a really useful resource. Next slide. Not to be left behind, eArch has its own YouTube channel, which contains a range of training and other videos. You can see a screenshot here. Next slide. And in addition to the webinars, we're also developing online Moodle-based training, which allows users to take part in online training at their own pace. So you'll see more of these coming online over the course of the next year. So that's where I want to end today. Thank you for listening, and I'll hand over now to Janet, who will look at a case study of the Italian State Archives in Rome.
Janet, we don't hear you, at least I don't hear you.
Okay, you must have muted me before. Thank you. Right, take two. Right, our case study is the Italian Central State Archives, based in Rome, and their challenge was to create a digital archive from scratch. They needed a comprehensive model for the whole archiving process, and they analysed several models, including eArch, but really they looked at many different models to see what was the best for them. They chose our eArch model, and Istvan has already told you about the general model that we had some while ago, and now the reference architecture. And they chose our model because it was extensive and sound and robust. So we met Sylvia Trani, the state archivist. She attended the Meet eArchiving event in Brussels in December 2019. And after that, they started using our specifications, and Karen has just mentioned CSIP, SIP, ERMS, SITS, and they started using those in April 2020. Now, if you're interested in technical detail, there's lots of that in the success story found at that link. Now, what did they find were the benefits? Well, a really big benefit was the specifications are based on real life experience. So this is not some wishy-washy, airy-fairy stuff. these are really practical, usable specifications, really, really helpful. They found the documentation to be comprehensive and user-friendly, and they found a clear method to build the best fitting solutions for them. So they used the specification, and then their IT systems built their software for them from scratch. So that whole freedom to mix and match, as Kuldar said, you can have whatever you want from what we offer. So we offer end-to-end systems, we offer components, and you're free to mix and match. You don't have to take a whole system, whatever. So they really found that very useful. They also found us to be a stable, friendly and open community, so much so that Sylvia actually joins in our meetings. So she is part of the reference architecture group, and that's really fantastic. The software that we have is free open source software. So again, you take what you need. It's good if people can give back as well. And as Karen said, we really look for that feedback from everybody so that what we have is usable. So what was the really big benefit for the Italian Central State Archives? Well, they saved time and effort in software development. The time that it took was halved. And now over to Diogo.
So how can you keep in touch with us? So you can always go to our website, and we have many ways you can keep in touch with us, like newsletters and the service desk, but you can also join us on social networks. So you have the links on below this picture. So you have the link for our LinkedIn account and for our Twitter account. We try to be as active as we can, share all our success stories, our webinars, our events. Whenever we release a new version of our software portfolio, of a tool, of a component of a software portfolio, or when we release a new version of or a new specification, we try to publish that in our social networks. And next slide. Of course, if you want to take the next step and you want to get really in contact with us and you want to be contacted directly by one of our experts, we have this very simple contact form, with the link is below, a picture where you can enter your name, your organization, your email, and answer the question whether you want or not to be contacted by an eArchiving expert. And we will get back to you. We'll get back to you right after that. So next slide. So what you can do now? So you can always join the specification discussion and development. We are open. We have been, as Janet said, for example, the State Archives of Italy just joined us last year because they liked our work and they want to participate. So you can also start using right away our specifications in open source software. You can provide feedback to help us improve in solving your problems. For our specifications, we have they are publicly available on GitHub, and you can create issues there, and you can see that can be your feedback, and you can see how they are tackled, how we are implementing them. You can also use our support services to help you get started. You can become an eArchiving ambassador. This is something that is happening really soon, as I already talked about. And we also encourage you to get involved and get your staff involved too. Please get in contact with us. We will appreciate all your hard work. Slide. So if you are still questioning if eArchiving is for you, yes, it can be. If you have concerns about transferring information assets between generations of technology, if you are worried about long-term integrity and authenticity of your data, and if you want to comply with all the current specifications and standards like OIAS, eArch, and METS, and you want to preserve and access your data over extended periods of time, yes, we can help you. We can, with our knowledge, our services, our training services, our onboarding services, our software, our components, our specifications, they can help you achieve these goals. So next slide. So thank you for joining this introduction session. All the presentation recording will be available through the eArchiving website, where you can check all the links and visit all the pages that we presented you. Thank you. So back to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Diogo. Before we conclude this section, I don't know, Fulgento, if you had any closing words you wanted to share.
No, we can do that at the end
Yeah.
of the session this morning. Actually, this afternoon. Right now there will be a break, I believe, until 11:30. We are a bit in advance, aren't we?
We are a bit in advance, yeah, but I think 5 minutes will recoup quickly enough.
Yeah, so we will be back, if I'm not mistaken, at 11:30, 11:30, with the next part in the agenda.
Exactly. So now we move on to this concludes the sort of introduction section, and as of 11:30 we will begin the session number 1, eArchiving for data producers. So normally we would like to invite you for a coffee or a croissant in the Commission's conference hall. Sadly, we cannot do that now, but we invite you to go and enjoy a nice break, and the technical team will still be here if you have any questions and you want to write them in the chat. Otherwise, enjoy the break and we'll see you at 11:30.